Hello and welcome to Close Up with the Hollywood Reporter. I'm Matthew Bellany. Today, I'd like to welcome our guests, Scott Stuber from Netflix, Jim Giannopoulos from Paramount, Tom Rothman from Sony Pictures, Donna Langley from Universal Pictures, Toby Emmerich from Warner Brothers, Jennifer Salke from Amazon Studios, and Alan Horn from the Walt Disney Studios. Let's get started. All right, so we're going to talk about a lot of good movies today, but I wanted to start with a question that has always intrigued me. Where do most bad movies go wrong?
Isn't this the impeachment hearing?
Yes, you're being impeached. But tell us, you make a lot of good movies, you made some bad ones. Where do they go wrong?
Well, I can tell you this, nobody ever set out to make a bad movie.
That's right.
Movies are comprised of tens of thousands of individual creative and financial decisions. And some of those decisions go awry along the way. But I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say it's never a matter of intentions.
That's for sure.
But it usually does come down to something that happened.
Well, for me, it's the screenplay. I think that it has to start in the screenplay, and as they say, if it's not on the page, it's not on the stage. And I think we have found issues with screenplays where we were forced to move on the film because of availability of stars and all that, and found the same problems in the finished or in the cut of the film we see that we saw in the screenplay. This is past like blaming marketing, right?
Of course. No, I just assume it's always marketing's fault, and then we go to this.
It's marketing.
I was going to say the same with any content. It's always the story. If you're not invested in the story, which starts on the page, then generally you're not going to have the kind of enthusiasm you want in the result.
I would agree that bad movies often go wrong either with a faulty script or rushing for a release date. But of course, there are good movies that don't work, and there are bad movies that are hits.
Right. Fewer these days.
Fewer,
But there
certainly
is a disparity between, increasingly for me, between what the Rotten Tomato score is and what the audience perception is. So the definition of bad could probably use clarification because there's not unanimity out there in terms of what is good and what is bad.
We'll get into a little bit about the release strategies, but I asked someone what the biggest difference is between the movie business now and 5 or 10 years ago, and they said that the number one thing is it's really hard to release a bad movie and have it be successful. And that was not always the case. And do you guys agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And how do you deal with that? How do you, other than making better movies, how do you deal with the fact that it's so difficult now?
It's hard because, by Thursday evening, you know the verdict, and so does everyone else. Right. Social media lights up, and it becomes a audience consensus, right or wrong, not always accurately, but people know immediately, and it has a great effect on it.
But I think it's also, there is a premium now, especially in the theatrical world, for high quality movies and for originality. And I think when we're programming our slates, it's not, the old adage, only make the hits. Of course, it's not that. We're all capable of making a movie that doesn't quite connect. But I think it used to be 5 or even 10 years ago, a movie in a certain genre, if it was a visual effects movie and it had a certain amount of spectacle, then it was anticipated that it would do really well in certain parts of the world. And, that bar is now really high. And I think that's true across all the genres. It used to be, again, comedy could be, or just sort of slap it together. Production values don't have to be that high. And I just don't think that's the case anymore.
I think the interesting thing isn't, to me anyway, it isn't a question of bad movies, because I agree with Alan, that's a very subjective thing. It's what I think nowadays is even more challenging is that good movies aren't good enough. I'm not sure you ever really got away with a movie that genuinely was a significant disappointment, but you certainly used to be. If you made a good movie, it was okay. And I know, and I'm sure it's true for everybody here, I don't think those of us still in the theatrical business can settle for good anymore.
Also, I think that the floor has kind of dropped. So if you missed, you could open to double digits. If you had a big movie with big stars, you can miss now and open to single digits.
And the bar is higher because there's a finite amount of leisure time to do anything. And so when the number of films available increases very dramatically, Scott,
Jen.
Jen, that amount of leisure time impacts choices. So you want to see the best.
You're also working without a net. It used to be that you always had this ancillary business, particularly in the heyday of video, where you were filling a pipeline of video, distribution and rental, and so there was always some amount of money that you could look to, and that's not the same anymore.
Yeah.
And I think the upshot of it is, Toby's point is what I tend to think is the business now is extremely binary.
Right.
So big hits are bigger,
Right.
and big misses are bigger.
I think a lot of people look at the Disney strategy as, the example of what's working. You are releasing a smaller number of very pre-branded, high franchised blockbuster movies. What is it about the strategy that people don't understand?
Well, I don't know if they don't understand it, but when the criterion for me, when people come in and say, we'd like to have this movie made, I say that, well, there are two questions. Do I have to see it now, or do I have to see it on a big screen? And if the answer to both of those is yes, I feel we have a shot. If the answer is no, it's just increasingly difficult to get people to leave the house, get in the car, drive to the theater, sit down. Person to the left's on his cell phone. You say, okay, I'm getting in a fist fight now. Person to the right has the flu. You better be a reason for going. And that's what our strategy is, to do event movies on the Disney side.
But on the studio side, you've had a lot of success remaking a lot of the library catalog.
Yes.
At what point does that become something you can't do anymore?
Well, there's no question that we, at some point, are going to run out of the kinds of films like the remake of Aladdin or a remake of Lion King. We have taken a step past that now, so Maleficent is a step away from Sleeping Beauty, and Cruella is a step away from 101 Dalmatians, and we think we have a lot of those opportunities. But there's no question, it's, again, a finite universe.
Mm-hmm. Scott, you've said that on Netflix, for a $60 million movie to be considered a success, it has to generate about 30 million account views. What did you mean by that? And that's really the first time I've heard you say anything about Netflix success metrics. So what is the barometer for success on Netflix?
Each film, like all of us, the P&Ls are different, right? So you're spending different marketing amounts, you're doing different things around it. Having been on both sides of the theatrical business and now the streaming, there's so much out there for the consumer that we're still fighting for time, right? And so we have our own tracking, we have our own anxiety, we have our own opening weekend. So we go through the same thing that everyone else does, and really, the same thing applies, which is great, is everything now, because there's too much choice for the consumer across all of our mediums. So we work through those things, but that was kind of a rough estimate of different things take different marketing aspects. So everything is kind of different in terms.
So what do you look at on Monday morning after a big film debuts on the surface?
Well, like everyone else, we have graphs all weekend long. So I'm getting things the same thing, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, all weekend. So
you know what we're all watching personally?
Yes, I do. I know exactly where you're counting. We're going to talk about it afterwards. But we look at things in our totality. We value over a month, basically. So we look at 28 days in terms of it, and we can, because we can see where things are opportunistic, we can market towards it. So we can market in the second and third weeks as well. So that's our valuation around those first 28 days in terms of how we green light. So we green light off of X money and how much we're going to spend, and we hope that this many people watch in that 28 days, and that's our success metrics.
So let's take a film like The Irishman, a film that has been gestating for a long time, was at several different studios, and you took it on. It's 3.5 hours. What is the success metric for that film?
Well, there's a lot of variables. You're building a new studio, so you have to really say, like, we have no IP, we have no library, we can't remake things, we don't have the great, cachet that Alan has over there. So you have to say, okay, what is your opportunity? And your opportunity is filmmakers, right? Like great scripts, great filmmakers. And so for us, to get Marty at Netflix was a big thing. It was a big win. It was a big kind of wake up, I think, hopefully for the talent industry to say, here's one of the icons of film coming over here to make a movie. So that was one thing. And then the economics we could look at and say, okay, we think we can actually support it with the subscriber rate. We have enough subscribers at that economics that what we think the movie can deliver on. And he over-delivered, frankly. I think the film is beautiful. We're deeply proud of it.
And you were smiling. You gave that film up.
Yeah, I think it was very ambitious for a studio to take on a project like that. And for Netflix, and I think they were very brave, but I think it's also a branding thing for someone like Netflix to be able to say, I have a Marty Scorsese movie, this is the only place you're going to see it. Yeah. And so there's a different perception of the economics that someone brings to that. For us at that level, for a period drama, or for anyone, I would submit, it was ambitious.
Yeah, that's where the consumer wins. I don't think any of the studios could make that movie at that cost, at that length, and come out alive.
Right.
So the consumer wins. They get to see this Scorsese movie that couldn't have been made otherwise.
But as people who have spent their careers in the movie business, does that bum you out that you can't make that movie?
You know, it actually doesn't. It would bum me out if no one made the movie, but the fact that it was able to find a home, because that is a movie that absolutely should get made. Because, when somebody, sits down, wherever they're going to sit down to watch it, they're not going to care about what it cost or, what it took to get it made. They're just going to care about the experience. And so I actually think that's what's really exciting about our entire ecosystem right now, even though it is, giving us headaches and sleepless nights in some ways. But it's never been a better time for content and for filmmakers and storytelling and for things to find their way into the world that I think we're getting squeezed over the last 5 or 6 years or even longer, right? So I think it's pretty exciting.
I think the only difference for us, maybe in the average consumer, is I bet everyone at this table wants to see The Irishman in a theater, in a full theatrical presentation.
Yeah.
So, and it will be available to some extent for that, or we'll get invited to Scott's house.
Exactly. We're going to take you up on that.
But that's a good question for Jen, because when Amazon Studios launched its film initiative, that was part of the rollout, is that you as a filmmaker would have that 3-month window, and you've sort of been moving away from that lately. Where do you see the strategy at Amazon going in the next couple of years?
Coming into the company are looking at the film side of things, they really were just embracing theatrical, lots of prestige movies, not a lot of customer focus, which is what really the company's North Star is really all about, Prime subscribers. So how do you evolve our movie business to be more focused on Prime subscribers? You know that the library deals of movies that our customers love, soon we might not be able to have access to all those libraries. So in trying to fill the pipeline, we know our customers love movies, just trying to shift. It's not closing the door on theatrical release. You see, we'll continue to acquire movies that will embrace that strategy, but it really is trying to get these movies to our Prime subscribers as soon as possible. And like you look at a movie like Late Night, for example, that I know the industry made an example of as a failure or a misstep from Amazon. And the truth is we bought that movie because I believe the movie's commercial and that our global customer would love the movie. And in fact, they do. So it went through this, contractually obligated theatrical release that we were happy to support for the talent. Then it gets this, horrible report card, but the truth is the movie's been watched. We only have US rights, but it's been watched in the US more than any other movie in the short time it's been on. It's like Manchester and that movie are like neck and neck. But you see the same with like Beautiful Boy, and these movies are watched by tens of millions of people. So you begin to rationalize making those purchases, and paying for an expensive marketing campaign for a theatrical release for Late Night did accrue to a lot of interest for people who are waiting to watch it on Prime. But would you rather strategize and kind of bifurcate that investment to push toward the Prime premiere? We'd probably do that a little bit differently. So you look at Aeronauts, and it's a case-by-case situation really for us right now.
Tom, do you think there is any movie star in the world that is as important to the business as strong IP?
Yeah.
Who?
I sure do. I think it's one of the great myths propagated out there that movie stars don't matter. I would argue the opposite. I would say movie stars in the right role with the right property matter more than ever before.
So would you trade Spider-Man for every Leo DiCaprio movie for the rest of his life?
I'd love to have both.
Who's he negotiating with?
I'd love to have both. That's right.
But you know what I'm saying.
Well, I can tell you this, that I think part of the real fun about those of us in the theatrical business, every creative decision is a financial decision, every financial decision is a creative decision, and you have to marry those two things, right? So we can't make movies independent of the potential return on that movie. Right. But if you talk about Leonardo DiCaprio, the event nature of having Leo and Brad and Margot in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was essential. You had to make a great movie, and you had a great filmmaker, and you made a great movie. But that movie was not based on any IP at all. That is a pure original, came out of the imagination and the headspace of one individual. a thing that is painfully rare now. And I think the thing that we have to be careful, those of us who have the privilege and the honor to steward these companies for however long or short we do it, not to narrow our audience and not to think that there isn't room for originality still with the audience. I think there is. And I think in the pursuit of that, movie stars are tremendously valuable. I think they always have been, and they always will be.
Alan, you and Tom recently had a little business dispute over Spider-Man. And I'm curious, what was the one thing that, above everything else, brought it to
Well, for
a
me,
deal?
well, first of all, I would say you must be thinking about Tarantula Man, because with Spider-Man, there was never.
Speaking of Spider-Man, though,
Okay, well, I would say that
there were some reports that Tom Holland got involved, like speaking of stars.
Tom Holland spoke to Bob Iger at D23, but and I think everything contributes to a final thing. But I think for what I would say is that the fan base, which is important to all of us, seemed to really respond to what Tom and his folks have done before with our people, and they like it. They like the fact that the MCU and Marvel Cinematic Universe and Kevin Feige were involved. And we heard feedback out there that suggested joining forces once again was probably really a good idea for that part of the world that's most important, which is the fan base.
Do you think this is something that will continue after this next movie?
I hope so.
Because you've shown you can do Spider-Man without Disney on the animated film.
Yes, we have. But I agree with my distinguished colleague from the other side of the aisle that I think this was a classic win, win, win. I think it was a win for Sony. Yeah. I think it was a win for Disney. And I think it was a win for the fans and moviegoers. And the only thing I would say about it is that, you know, news cycles and the rhythm of negotiations do not necessarily overlap. Right. And I think that this is, in the words of Shakespeare, a consummation devoutly to be wished, and I think we would have gotten there. And the news got ahead of some things. But
I agree with that.
I think it's an example of the kind of terrific collegiality that you sort of see around this table, and that we had. We had 2 films and 4 years of a terrific relationship with Disney and an excellent creative partnership. And I could just say that, you know, we're very, very excited. And July of 2021, coming to a theater near you.
Scott, Netflix has really thrived by putting the customer first and doing everything for the customer. But I will say one thing that the customer likes is to know what movies are hits and what movies aren't. And Netflix has been adamant about not releasing viewership numbers. Why will Netflix not do that?
Part of it was just the aspirational way that Ted and Cindy built the TV side. When they built it, it was for television creators to get out of ratings and get out of standards and practices and actually free up their narrative form so that they could actually tell stories that they weren't completely every week, night after night, those numbers. So the methodology was right. And now as we've grown and we see that people want it, particularly in our business, we're used to it. Every newscast in every local market is top 5. Right. It's what we strive for. And frankly, I think we all get better through failure. It makes you sharper, it makes you, and so we're okay with it. We don't like it, but it makes us all come back. So we're definitely, as a company, moving more, and you'll see more of it. We do it in some of our earnings reports, and we're going to be doing it more and more because that creator and that filmmaker and that actor and that actress want to know that their movie got out there globally in a big way.
So I'll ask some of the others, why is it so important to release box office numbers?
I can't stand it. Popularity and quality are not always go hand in hand. And, you know, I also think, to tell you the truth, many times the obsession that the media has, and we're guilty too, because we feed it when it suits us. What movie is first and what movie is second and what movie is third is very unhealthy.
I think this obsession with the ranking is ridiculous because we all know the economics of a movie or the story of a movie. Success or failure is not born on opening weekend.
Absolutely.
You know, it's
It
the
also
sum of its
takes you back
parts.
to, you know, network television as it evolved and the overnight ratings that sent so many reporting on those numbers, that when the viewing habits had changed and these shows were being watched, you know, globally, and were hugely popular, but they were being given a report card every morning that they were DOA, which then creates perception, and then the company starts worrying about, how solvent the show is, and it sent a lot of shows to an early graveyard, reporting that way. When they learned later, of course, they were all being pirated all over the world. Now we can monetize those things. So the tail on all the success of these things, whether it be a movie or a television series, is years long. Look at your own intentions inside your head of everything you want to engage with. We'll be lucky if we're all alive to be able to see half of it. So I think it's just hard to really be a, judge and jury on the success of things.
When we dated the Quentin movie, I knew a year in advance, because it was the second week of Lion King, that absolutely positively that movie would not be number one.
Right.
And the conversation we had to have with the filmmakers was, understand, you won't be number one. We'll try to get your biggest opening ever, but even if we get your biggest opening ever, I promise you will not be number one, but I also promise you it's a great day for the movie. And that movie was not number one.
Right.
We were number two. And we were number two, and I was the happiest Jew in Hollywood.
Right.
We had a great multiple.
And it's not to blame the press, obviously when it extols the success, we all benefit from it. One of the things we have to manage is expectations. As you come up to a release date and the press says it's going to open to $50 million, and you open to 43, and it's a disappointment. We never said it was going to open to 50. We may have had our own, research, our tracking, our own things, but, I think sometimes managing expectations can make a movie appear, or having excessive expectations can have something that's quite successful look less so.
Right. A question for Alan. I remember when American Idol was number one for 4 or 5 years in a row, and it was getting 30 million viewers a night. And the president of NBC at the time said, "We understand, but someday it will not be cool to watch American Idol anymore." I wonder if you think about that with the Marvel movies.
The fast answer is no, because I think if the film has a compelling storyline, if it has heart and humor, my two things that I insist on, and it's terrifically well executed, well acted, well directed, well produced, and well written, I think there's an audience for a great story. And the audience so far has shown no fatigue with the films we're making, which are, let's say, generally classed as superhero films. But who knows?
23 is a long streak.
It is
unprecedented.
Yeah, it is. But Kevin Feige's working away. We have he'll be making 3 or 4 a year, and they're very different from one another. And so we'll see. We'll see. We don't worry about it too much. I think that going to the earlier point when we've done Lion King, we've done Aladdin, we have some of these other things, but we're also doing Jungle Cruise, and we're doing other films that are just different.
But we started to notice with Avengers, it was running out of steam.
Especially the second one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
But I also think the thing people don't give comic books credit for is for a giant group of us, they are literature. They're like To Kill a Mockingbird. They are deep character-based
They're
things.
not
and
To
people,
Kill a Mockingbird.
But they have I'm not saying it's To Kill a Mockingbird.
I just got
They have a
as a
historical
former English
resonance.
teacher.
Yes, I don't want to confuse the Searchlight Tom with the Sony Tom.
But I have to say something.
But they
there
have
to
a
Kill a
depth and a
Mockingbird.
resonance, and that's why you have 800 characters. And
Right,
you have
you care,
Sting,
people
and
care
Kevin, who
deeply.
I've known for a
Yeah.
long time, takes them deeply seriously and understands the fan base and the nuance of those characters,
they
right? So
connect
they
with
have
them
a
and-
resonance
Yeah.
that people dismiss sometimes because they feel bright in those things, but there is real character, and Kevin did it incredibly well, and has done a great job of narratively taking those characters through that universe.
It's also an incredibly deep bench, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
almost like you can't look at it like it's not American Idol, which was just one thing, one format, one concept. This is many different concepts with many different characters. I think what they've done brilliantly is the shift in tone between the different movies
There's
and the different
7,000
characters. It's
characters
great.
in the MCU, and I would suggest that 5 years ago, 6 years ago, no one knew who except for the comic book aficionados, no one knew Doctor Strange was. They don't know who Guardians of the Galaxy are, but then they're introduced. So we have 6,812 to go.
Toby, one thing that struck me when I saw you at Toronto right after the premiere of Joker was when we were talking about the film, you said, we wanted to do something that we knew Marvel and Disney could never do. I'm curious, is that how you approach the DC library?
Well, I mean, the impetus behind making the Joker really came from Todd. It was Todd's idea to sort of do this origin story, and we all read the script and thought it was really brilliant. We did think that one of the advantages of being Warner Brothers and having DC is that we didn't feel that all the movies had to be, and not that Disney's films are, but we didn't feel that our films all had to be of the same tone or all in a connected universe. And we thought that making an R-rated supervillain origin story was a cool idea. We thought we'd do in our first weekend what we did in our second weekend. We didn't see it coming when, like at this level when we greenlit the film, but we try to say that we try to make a very diverse slate, and that was part of the idea behind that.
And there was some criticism of the violence in the film in a way that another film, a Universal film, The Hunt, was actually scrapped over some similar concerns. What made those different?
We took The Hunt from the release calendar out of sensitivity for the mass shootings that happened over the course of that weekend. And we were in a window where we were heavily marketing. It was a very short window. And it was because of those events that we removed the movie. It later got conflated with it being about the movie subject matter. But remember, nobody has seen this movie outside of the studio. And so it was a reaction to marketing. But that wasn't the reason that we took it off the calendar.
And Joker's concerns, you know, the family seemed upset, but the consumer didn't seem to mind.
A lot of the social media and comment around the film really were by people who hadn't seen the film and didn't know what it was. So we looked at the film really closely and did feel that it was a great film, that it was a piece of art, and we didn't think it would inspire violence. And so we took it to Venice. It won the Golden Lion. Mm-hmm. And so we felt comfortable releasing the film in terms of that. We really thought it was a great film.
One thing I thought when I was thinking about this, and I don't think, you weren't running Fox when Fight Club came out?
Yes, I was running
He was production, I was running international.
Over there.
When that movie,
Don't talk about Fight
when that
Club.
movie came out, there was criticism of the violence, and I wonder what would have happened if that movie had been released in the social media age.
I don't know, but I think there has always been a lot of talk and pop culture impact from films, right? And the mere fact that everybody's on Facebook now doesn't really, to me, change that much. So there was a lot of talk about Fight Club at the time. There was certainly a lot of media commentary about it, as I think there would be today. So I actually don't really think it's that different, and I think those issues are just the same kind of issues that Warner's and Uni and all of us have dealt with at various times. And to do our jobs, you got to be a strong First Amendment advocate in these jobs at the bottom line, because you're an advocate for artists that you're working with. But you do make moral judgments, and I certainly have in my time. Neither Jim and I nor I were the green light decision on Fight Club. We sort of had to shepherd it down the line. So I can't speak to what I would have done, but I certainly do make an ultimate social responsibility judgment. And I think that, it's important that films have, in that old expression, redeeming social values.
Yeah, I also think, to Donna's point, given the extent of gun violence in our society at the moment, that there's a heightened sensitivity to those issues, and there is a certain responsibility and a line. But I also agree with Tom that there's a First Amendment, and creative expression needs to be permitted. So I think we have to define that line for ourselves and for our companies and for our filmmakers as we go forward.
But you can't abdicate responsibility either. I think you have to make those judgments, and it sounds like Warner's and Uni considered those things very seriously, because you are responsible. And I do believe, I think one of the great things about movies, and interestingly, one of the things that separates theatricality from some of the other mediums now, is the cultural impact that films make.
Right. Mm-hmm.
They make cultural impact. And I know for my own self, I like it when we're making a positive cultural impact. I think that's a really great thing, and one of the things that movies can still do, and still do on a worldwide basis.
I think we would all, we're all in this business because we would want to back the vision of the artist. And we've had some content that I felt that way about, like I had to try to get as much information as I could from our customers. And then you saw that actually it surprised me that there was something I thought they would react pretty polarized or negatively to. And they didn't. And I think we see that in the audience for The Joker. Like, the sensitivity's there. We need to pay attention to it. We need to get as much information as possible. But there is such a variety of content out there that the audience is prepared to see a lot of different content that can push the boundaries. But I do think you have to be thoughtful about it and get as much information as you can.
I wanted to switch to one industry issue that is not going away, and that's the windowing issue. We're basically at a stalemate at this point, where traditional studios are releasing films that play in theaters. 3 months later, they go to home video. Netflix is putting movies and other content directly online, and the major theater chains will not play those movies. When is the stalemate going to end, in your opinion? Do you think that we are headed for some kind of a movement at all in this issue?
It's complex, right? Everyone has their own business model that you have to respect.
But you're
right?
in the MPAA now.
I'm on all kinds of, I spend a lot of time on this issue, right? Because like I said, when we start, right, no matter how well funded you are, you have to make great things, right? And inevitably, when you go into that theatrical market, you are competing with a lot of historically successful companies that have a lot of IP, that you have to find the place on the calendar, as Tom talked about. And when you're starting with those things where you don't have library and you don't have IP, you have to build a vibrant film studio, which was the first thing we had to do, and that was filmmakers, right? And as you extend, we extended a little bit last year with Roma, we extended more this year, we tried to extend even more, and we couldn't find the right place, right? But what it did with NATO, and I've spent a lot of time with the global cinema chains, they have their business that I also have to respect and protect for them, because it's a big brick and mortar business, there's a lot at stake. So it's a hugely complex thing that affects all the things we're talking about, even success, right? Many of my colleagues at this table are going to be in the same conversations we are, which is, where are we theatrically, then where are we streaming, then where are we down the line? That's the success of those films. So there's a lot going on, but I think holistically, we all have to get to a place where there's opportunity and choice, and more movies, to Tom's point, get an opportunity, and that it's not always in one size fits all. So to me, I'm in it quite a bit, but I think it's an interesting and good conversation, but we have to be cognizant of everyone's businesses and protect them.
Well, you guys are about to be in that situation because your companies are both launching streaming services. Do you anticipate that changing the company position on Windows?
I can't speak to that, but I think, we all know, all of us sitting around the table know that, it's a non-starter for the companies to have the conversation with exhibition. Our agendas are not aligned at all. Whether you believe in breaking windows or you don't, our agendas are not aligned. And I think ultimately it might be the consumer, it might be the audience that speaks, particularly as more SVOD services come online. And what does that do to the home entertainment window, and ultimately what does that do to the theatrical window? So I feel it may end up being by attrition, that none of us have any real control over, that the business model just shifts to such a degree that it winds up becoming so obvious that something has to change in there. So I don't think it's really a sort of an issue about whether you believe in it or you don't believe in it. It's just where is the consumer going to be, and where do we need to be in order to best serve them?
Mm-hmm. And Alan, you guys have been the most hardline on the theatrical window issue, but now with Disney Plus, is that going to impact things?
Well, we will reevaluate everything all the time, but we are committed to the theatrical window. That model has worked for us. I agree that one size doesn't fit all. I agree also that there's a message we'll receive from, I think the consumers would like to say, what they would like is have every film available in every medium immediately, because it's just easy for them. But we find that, especially with a lot of the event movies we're making, now it's a little different now that we have Fox as part of our films combined studio, and they're under the umbrella. And Fox Searchlight doesn't make the kind of films that big Fox makes, or that Marvel makes, or that Sean Bailey makes in the internal thing. But right now, we remain committed to the theatrical window. That window has proven very important to us because, first of all, we have a high retention rate. We get a lot of money for each dollar. But also, these event films are extremely expensive. Mm-hmm. And we get a lot out of the theatrical release, a lot, because the audience has been embracing them. And then we will go subsequently into our streaming services. But I give Bob Iger a lot of credit for saying, you know, we're going to launch our own streaming services. And I think it's a bold move, but I think it's a good one.
In 5 or 10 years, will I be able to pay $100 and watch Avengers Endgame 10 on my Disney Plus the weekend it's in theaters?
Yeah, I would say right now, no. I can't predict 5 or 10 years from now. And you're assuming I'll be alive for this, right?
You're assuming
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Even if you split that $100 with the theaters?
It's like a negotiation. I don't know. Because if you were to say, okay, well, what if it's $1,000? Oh, well, I don't know. Right now, our position.
Some would pay it.
Someone
some
will.
would.
Well, there's that service. There is a service around some very high
red carpet.
things. Our position remains the same. I want to be clear about that. We are committed to the theatrical window, and that's what we've been doing, and that's what we will do. One good thing about the streaming service is that when we had films that I think are very, very good films, like McFarland, done by Nicky Caro with Kevin Costner, like $1 Million Arm, like Queen of Cotway. These are very good films. We are very, very proud of them. So if you take the criterion of quality and say, okay, that satisfies that, and take that off the table, I will say that each of those films, despite that quality, lost money. But now I can say to Sean Bailey, guess what? You can now make those films again because we don't have to spend $30 million in marketing them. And I like that. And I think this whole environment, by the way, is really exciting for the consumer.
I agree.
Jim, you're now making movies for Netflix in addition to
Every
making
chance
them.
we get.
But when you're sitting down and thinking, okay, what is a Paramount release and what is going to be a Netflix movie, how does it not turn into an A and B level conversation?
It's a choice you make as you develop. You know, we develop 10 or 12 properties for every movie we make. You know, that's very typical. So there are lots of properties that you get to a point when you talk about theatricality and you say, well, this movie may work, but I'm going to spend $30 or $40 or $50 million explaining that to people. Whereas if Scott wants it and we can make it and both of us benefit from it, it's no different really than the fact that studios have been making MOWs for the networks for 50 or 60 years. It's content. And
I would say, by the way, just to right on Jim's point, that I don't see it as an A or B movie thing. It's a financial.
Because in our business, you have to make profit. You're not going to on every movie.
Right.
But over the course of a slate and quarter to quarter, you've got to earn back the revenue on the films. So it's definitely not, to me anyway, not an A or B.
I agree with Alan. Actually, I saw all 3 of those films, and they're all excellent. But when you measure them by theatricality and marketability, it's hard, especially in today's climate and with the choices a consumer has. But those movies on a Disney Plus, you know, if I'm a Disney Plus subscriber, I'd love to have those movies.
I mean, the good thing in it with Jim, you know, we made this film To All the Boys, which is a terrific film, right? So I think Tom talked a little about movie stars earlier. There's been genres that I think we've lost in the theatrical business because of the isolation. I think what everyone will find in a great way is you open the funnel, you get more storytellers, and there's a giant audience there, right? So even some of the more challenging films we've made, even Roma, right, which is on paper a black and white foreign language film, the audience was there for it. So that was really reassuring that, you know, people love storytelling and they love movies, right, in every form. And that's kind of what we're all trying to do, is keep that vibrant.
And it allows the full discovery of word of mouth and time for people to enjoy a movie and be able to find it on a streamer, whereas it'd be out of the theaters in 3 or 4 weeks and, you know, virtually lost.
Yeah. Besides, notwithstanding the bent of this conversation about strategy and the kind of movies, we still have Fox Searchlight, which both of these gentlemen know a lot about. They've won 4 out of the last 10 Academy Awards, and we are backing them 100%. So we're continuing that because, you know what, they make terrific movies with very renowned filmmakers with great casts, and they're good at this.
But not all of those movies will get theatrical releases.
Oh, I think they will, yeah.
You think so?
For
All
the
Searchlight
ones
movies?
from Fox Searchlight? Yeah, it's a theatrical program just like it was when they were running it.
Okay. Donna, one thing I wanted to ask you is that, you know, Alan's had a lot of success with the cinematic universe at Marvel and connecting a lot of the characters. And Universal sort of, you dipped your toe into that and then kind of pulled back. Do you see creating any kind of interlocking movies that can franchise any of your IP?
Well, we're doing it with Fast and Furious, as we saw this year with Hobbs and Shaw, and so that's spinning characters off. And we have a kids animated TV show, courtesy of Netflix, which is absolutely fantastic, and that's all geared towards unlocking a younger audience. You know, the movies are PG-13; they're a little hardcore, so we tend not to get younger audiences in until later. We had an attempt at interlocking our monsters, and it was a failed attempt. And what we realized is that these characters are indelible for a reason, but there's no urgency behind them, and certainly the world was not asking for a shared universe of classic monsters. But we have gone back and created an approach which is filmmakers first, any budget range, and our first movie, Invisible Man, directed by Lee Winnell and produced by Jason Blum. So we put it into a different economic model and starring Elizabeth Moss, and we're really excited about it.
So will those movies be connected or no?
No, not really. They're standalone, and they're very different filmmaking voices. They're original, contemporary. There were sort of no rules. We kind of blew up any kind of rules, methodology, and we got back some really exciting ideas. So, it's experimental, but I think it can be commercial.
I wanted to talk a little bit about China because we've seen some of the issues flare up lately, this battle between commerce and free speech and appeasing the Chinese government. And I'm curious where you guys think the limit on that is for Hollywood films and what you're willing to do to stay in that market. And it's come up with Mulan recently.
It did. First of all, if Mulan doesn't work in China, we have a problem, I think. But my feeling is that, first of all, free speech is an important component of our society, certainly, and folks ought to be able to say what they want to say, and I can't speak for what Yifei says in China, and we didn't know about it, what she was going to say, and that's up to them. We try to be non-political, apolitical when it comes to all this stuff. It's just too important. There's always an issue somewhere in the world, and China happens to be a very, very big market, but it's not the only market where there have been issues. The only thing I have said to the folks that work with me is that keep in mind that when you speak, they don't quote you because, like for me, it wouldn't be quoted because I'm Alan Horn. They don't care about Alan Horn. They care about me as long as I have this job, and the second I don't, whatever I say will be quoted anyway. It's just, so I say to people, remember that you are what you do, and that's what will be reported, and that carries with it a certain responsibility to at least be aware that that occurs and to be sensible and think before you speak, especially on social media.
Does it bother you that the movies can't offend China?
No, I mean, there's places all over the world, as we say, where not hard to offend somebody somewhere. And I didn't say they can't. They did. So people will say what they will say. For us, we just say, look, we're in the movie business, and we're making movies that are designed to be seen by an appreciative, hopefully, audience that will enjoy our movie. It's the entertainment industry, and we want them to go out and see our movie and have a good time. We don't wish to be political, and to get dragged into a political discussion, I would argue, is sort of inherently unfair. It's not what we do. We're not politicians. It's not what we do. We're not a governmental organization. We're making movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's also a difference between pandering and cultural sensitivity. Right. You know, there's a big spotlight on China because of its size, because of its growing global dominance, and because of the limitations in press and freedoms in the country. But Malaysia, other parts of the world, India, there are many times when we've been censoring movies for years just to address the concerns, social and cultural, of individual markets. When you do it in China, it becomes pandering.
I mean, I think Jim's point is the right one, which is we run a business. You know, we have to be sensitive to important markets.
Okay. You've all had long careers doing this. What's the one movie that you are particularly proud that you got made? You can't say Titanic or Avatar.
Why not?
Why?
That's pretty good.
I guess
I'd take either one.
That's what I would put a good pair of aces right there.
Easy green lights.
I would say commercially Deadpool and creatively Slumdog Millionaire.
It's asking which of your children you love the best, and I love all of mine.
But you love one the most.
No, no, I won't answer the one I love the most, actually. The one I love the most, the one I'm most proud of, is not one you might expect, but I'll give you the one I'm most proud of is actually a movie called Master and Commander.
Right.
That was
Weir.
a movie that Peter Weir said no to me 3 different times, and I chased that movie for 14 years and had to become the head of a studio with this gentleman to my right to be able to do it. But no, what I was thinking was Moulin Rouge. It was insane to do that at the time.
There hadn't been a movie musical in 20 years.
Not just that, there had never been anything like this.
I just
And I can
rewatched it. It's
remember
bonkers.
It's great.
standing on the set, begging Baz to roll film, buddy. Let's go, roll
How about to
it.
finish?
Roll it.
Such a good movie.
And filmmakers who make things that the audience hasn't seen until they see it.
Right.
So I've been fortunate enough to have a few of those along the way, but that's one I was thinking about last week with a measure of pride.
It's such a deeply unfair question.
It really is. That's a good story, though.
But I'll give it a go because there's just so many movies that I'm proud of for different reasons. But a movie I'm really proud of, Scott, was around when we made it, is United 93, Paul Greengrass's movie. It was actually my first movie I advocated for to greenlight as president of production. And it's the one that most acutely reminds me of the power of storytelling, the power of cinema, and the power of filmmakers' singular vision. And then on the complete other end of the spectrum, the other movie I'm really proud of from a commercial standpoint, and just because, again, sort of similar to Tom's story, it wasn't obvious until it worked, and that was Mamma Mia. There were a lot of people who didn't love ABBA as much as I did, and well, I don't know if anyone loves ABBA
She did
as
love
much
ABBA.
as
That
I
was all
do.
Donna. That was good.
But it wasn't obvious, and it really wasn't obvious. So yeah.
Interesting.
You know, we're about to start shooting the Elvis Presley movie with Baz in Australia, and I just, listening to Tom's story, I visioned myself in Australia saying, Baz, please roll.
Just put him on the phone
I'm
with
slightly
Tom.
distracted. For me, the one that comes to mind, just because it's happening right now, and I think Donna might have even been around when this movie started, we started developing in 1998, I think it was Motherless Brooklyn.
Yes.
At
yes,
New Line.
Yes.
And
We had the
Edward was
book.
posting American History X.
Ed Norton.
And he and DeLuca, he brought DeLuca this book, and DeLuca bought it. And Edward, you know, he didn't hand in the first draft until maybe like 2002. So he took, 4 years writing the script, and lots of filmmakers, it's a great book. A lot of filmmakers knocked on our door and wanted to take it, and they were, really attractive filmmakers, but you call Edward, he said, no, I promise you, and I'm gonna get it there. And he persevered, and we just had the premiere in New York at the New York Film Festival. And just to say, wow, we worked on this for 20 years, and we actually did it, is very satisfying.
That's amazing.
That's
Can't
interesting.
wait to see it.
I think as the new kid on the block in this business, having like less than 2 hands of movies, I'm gonna abstain.
What about a show, though?
Oh, I could talk about that for a long time.
Give us a good show.
I think just at the time at NBC Universal, trying to get that network from 5th place under Telemundo to 1st place, and Bob and I trying to get in there and figure out where the next hit was coming from in clearly a hit-driven business under impossible restraints of a shrinking, linear audience. Having This Is Us come through the door, and the connection, like my story, my dad had died a few months before. Dan came in, he talked about the story, about his dad. We just had a real meeting of the minds, and the show has been one that I love deeply, and most recently that just, I watch every episode, and it still is very meaningful to me.
Well, for me, first of all, I don't feel like I'm making anything. I just, the decision to make a film is there's so many collaborative forces that conspire to get a film actually greenlit. But in my long career, I look back with great affection at Rob Reiner's first film, Spinal Tap. I look back at when Harry Met Sally and The Shawshank Redemption, when we had Castle Rock together, 5 of us. I love my time at Warner Brothers, trying to get Harry Potter right and making sure it was really, really good. And at Disney, I'm excited about Mulan coming up. We're all very proud of Black Panther and Captain Marvel, because they ventured into areas that were not ventured into before.
It's experiential, right? So you remember all the nuance. Like, there's two that stick out in some ways. One, which I would have never dreamed what Don and these guys have done with Fast and Furious, but when we did it, what was fun about it was watching all of that talent have their first hit together. Right? Usually you have an older actor or director who's experienced it, but that whole team. So I vividly remember the weekend being on the cell phone, the old block cell phone at Gladstone's with Neil Moritz, and the euphoria for all of that talent, right? That they've grown into this incredible thing. So that you always remember. And then frankly, on the deep flip side, what was great for me with The Irishman, at the New York Film Festival, was being with those icons and having a moment and seeing Bob and Al and Joe and Marty, and you just felt history, and just being around it, I felt like a little kid.
So great.
To see those gentlemen who've created the movies we've all beloved be there and feel the kinship they had together was really special. And that's what these things are about, is the moments we all get to share with that level of talent.
Great. One thing I picked up from Bob Iger's book is his skill in delivering bad news that he writes about. And I'm curious, these are jobs in which you say no way more than you say yes. And you deliver bad news to very powerful and creative people a lot. How have you developed that skill over the years?
It is a skill, and I think it's an important one for exactly the reason you just mentioned. I always say to people, perfect the art of no. In fact, turning down a project, you're tempted sometimes to explain and justify why. And often you're talking to somebody who's very passionate about their creative effort, who's been working on it forever, who believes in it so passionately, and you're not going to do it anyway. So a gentle, it's not for us. I hope to see you at your premiere, and I'd be applauding you from the audience. There are various versions of that, but I very rarely will criticize someone or give them back notes or reasons to justify a no, because it doesn't serve any purpose.
I think most of our friends in the creative community say the next best answer to yes is a fast no.
But yeah.
Right. I was going to say early transparency.
Waiting for that dream to not be told.
Don't
try to be
belabor
as
it.
quick as you can.
And it's certainly more fun to say yes.
I'm sure. That's for sure.
Nobody complains.
Yeah. Is there one that got away? Is there a no that you, above everything else, really regret?
The 300 that they made. That was like a story my grandmother used to tell me as a little kid. She always told me Greek myth stories. She was a classics professor from
That's so
Constantinople.
interesting you would say 300.
And I was so close to it that I thought we should do it for real. And I saw this comic book, the Miller book, and I thought, oh, come on, you can't do it like that.
Can I make you feel better?
Yeah.
I did too. Because we had Zack Snyder off
Zach
of
did,
Dawn of
yes,
the Dead.
and he did.
And
He
we
did.
had a book that we were developing in the same space with another prominent filmmaker, and we felt like we couldn't do it. And
I
so that
thought
one.
Ridley
another of
Scott
those
should do it.
ones.
Ridley Scott should do it like
But
Gladiator.
it wasn't obvious until, kudos to you guys, because it wasn't obvious until it was obvious,
Yeah.
right? It was
But at the
definitely one of
time
those-
when Zack Snyder came in, I said, okay, are there swords in this movie? Yes. Are there sandals? Arrows? Yes. Shields? Yes. I said, come on, we just did Troy 20 minutes ago.
Right.
Why would we do that?
But some of
And you know
those
what?
lines.
And we took partners in. We had partners.
I think
So
we've
it's not-
all said
it wasn't
no.
easy.
I think if you went back to every no that we've all given, you could pick a portfolio of films that would be more successful than the hits we've said yes to. And then
That's
nobody.
the old David Picker line, but I don't believe it. I actually don't believe it. I don't think we, those of us who are a little long in the tooth.
Right.
I think for each one of the people around the table, whom I greatly admire, I tend to think you guys, we all get it right more than we get it wrong. But otherwise,
we wouldn't be so long
You
in
might
the
not be
tooth.
at the table.
otherwise, you're not still pitching for the
No,
Yankees.
I'm not saying every movie you said no to. I'm saying you could select.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, a small
Oh, I
percentage
see,
of the
right.
no's, not all the no's.
yeah.
No, God knows, definitely.
All right, we have a couple of lighter questions to end on. I'm curious, what movie did you watch over and over as a child?
I'll answer that, and it's a fun story. At the moment, for me, it was The Great Escape. And when I saw the first long cut in the editing room with Quentin Tarantino, which was quite an experience, he sat where Don is, I sat here, and we watched the monitor.
Wow.
And I had to tell him beforehand, because it was longer than it was there, I said, listen, guys my age, we actually have to go to the bathroom. So I don't want you to take anything from that, but we need to plan for this going in. But there was a moment for anybody who's seen the movie
Yeah.
where suddenly, and I didn't know, this was not in the script, so I didn't know that it was coming, when suddenly Leonardo DiCaprio is actually in the footage as Steve McQueen
Yeah.
in the movie that I must have watched 20
Yeah.
times.
Wearing
when
the
I was
leather
a kid,
bomber.
wearing the leather bomber.
baseball glove.
Going, Captain,
Yeah.
right? You know? So for me as a kid, it was The Great Escape. And a little Lawrence of Arabia, which I tried to get my daughters to watch, and they promptly fell asleep. So it didn't work.
Mine was Sound of Music.
Yeah, that was mine too.
Yeah.
Sound of Music and Dr. Zhivago.
Yeah.
Dr. Zhivago was on it.
We acted out all of it. I have 3 sisters and
Which one were you?
performances. My little sister was the only one who got to be the little one singing the sun, we'll go to bed and so must I. But we alternated from the teenage Liesel to, the younger characters too. But I loved it. My kids love it too.
Well, when I was a kid, I mean, we're not going to go back to like Al Jolson here. I just want to do that. But for me, it was honestly not because I'm at Disney. It was Bambi.
Oh, I love
When I was-
Bambi
when
too.
I was a
It didn't terrify you?
No, it
Sad.
didn't. I can still hear, mother. Really strong movie. Hats off, But anyway, long time ago.
My mother took me, that was my first movie when I was 5 years old. I remember when she died, I went, wait, what?
Yeah.
What's going on? It was tragic and traumatic, but it was still great. It was still wonderful.
My mother loved Dr. Zhivago, so I'd watch the classics, and then I was of the generation right when Star Wars hit. So I was that kid who probably Star Wars, Steven and Indiana Jones and everything. So she would teach me the classics, and then and when that popcorn moment hit, I was all in, and I left Star Wars and said, can I go back in the theater again? And she was thrilled because she could go back and shop and be like, yes, keep going for like the next 6 hours.
For me, well, when you say watch again and again, I think of the Godfather movies.
Screw
I kept
Bambi,
watching
you-
them. No, because it was the early days of like Betamax and VHS, and so those were the early tapes that we just wore out,
Right.
Yeah.
That's all the time we have. Thanks, everyone. This was a great conversation, and thanks for being here.
Thank you
Thank
very much.
you.
Thanks, guys.